Students, welcome back to our channel of One Stop Law. In the previous lecture, we have learned about the concept of consent as laid down under Section 13 of the Indian Contract Act, and that was when we learned about the definition and concept of consent and meeting of minds and free sense, same thing in the same sense. But then we need to learn about free consent because free consent is one of the essential ingredients for a valid contract, and that is provided under our section 14 of the act itself. Now section 14 gives the definition of free consent. Okay, in the previous lecture I gave you an example of a balloon seller, that a child wanted a red balloon, and when it went to that balloon seller, the balloon seller wanted to sell a green balloon. Okay, now think of a situation when the child was insisting on having the red balloon only, and the parent of the child scolds the child. Okay, gives a quite hard scolding to the child that take the green balloon whichever is being given to you by the balloon seller. Now the child, after getting the scolding, became sad, and you know in that sad state only accepted that green balloon from the balloon seller. So here what we see, that ultimately they both agreed, right? Whatever we understood in the concept of consent under section 13, that ultimately it's about agreeing on the same thing in the same sense. So here the child and the balloon seller both ultimately agreed to the green balloon. Okay, but can we say that the child here agreed freely or voluntarily, wholeheartedly to this green balloon? No. Then why did it agree? Because there was an extrinsic factor. What was that? The scolding it got from its parent. Okay, so that is why we say that here the consent of the child is not free, and that's exactly what we learn about under section 14 of the Indian Contract Act, which gives you the definition of free consent. And it doesn't define you in a positive way that free consent means this. Rather, it gives you a negative connotation to this concept of free consent, that consent is said to be not free when it is caused by certain factors. Okay, so basically section 14 gives you five circumstances or five factors which vitiate one's free consent. Okay, what are the factors? And they are exactly done in the order, following the sections. Like section 15 deals with coercion, the first factor which vitiates a consent. Section 16 deals with undue influence. Section 17 deals with fraud. 18 deals with misrepresentation. Then section 20, 21, 22, three sections deal with mistake. In between we have section 19 and 19A, which deals with the effect of coercion, fraud, undue influence and misrepresentation on contract, because that is a different effect. Okay, because what happens when a contract is well, is caused by the consent of the parties to it and not free, or any of the parties consent is not free. And if it is not free because of the first four factors we spoke about, right, that is, if it is not free because of coercion, undue influence, fraud or misrepresentation, then the effect of it on the contract is that it does not make the contract void, rather it makes the contract voidable. Now what is voidable? Voidable means the party whose consent to the contract was not free can anytime go to the court and get it declared void. Now, students, remember one thing, that if a contract is valid, okay, if a contract is otherwise valid, it cannot be declared just like that void by going to a court. The court cannot even declare a valid contract void just like that. Similarly, if a contract is void, then one need not wait for a court to declare it void. It is void ab initio, and the court is there only to give you the remedy, the prayer, the relief you grant from the court. The contract is not to be declared void separately by the court. So the court can actually declare a contract void if consent to it was not free, and that too because of the first four factors laid down under section 14, that is coercion, undue influence, fraud and misrepresentation, not because of mistake. Remember, if a contract is caused by mistake, like the consent was given under mistake, then the contract does not, I repeat, does not become voidable. It will be either valid or void, and when we discuss mistake in details in our subsequent lectures, I will tell you how and when it becomes void and when it becomes valid. But for the first four factors, coercion, undue influence, fraud, and misrepresentation, when a consent to a contract is caused or influenced by these extrinsic factors, the effect is that the contract will be voidable at the option of the party whose consent was so obtained. Okay, so we will, and also you can see with a blue marker I have written Cuffum square in between the section and its explanation. So actually it is a easy trick to remember the sections in order. Okay, section 14 gives us the all the factors as a whole, and then the subsequent sections give the definition and illustration for the different concepts. So if you see C stands for coercion, U stands for undue influence, fraud for F, M square. So next we have M, 1M for misrepresentation, and the final M for mistake. So your contract act gives the factors in this order, so it's easier to remember in this way. That's why we call it Cuffum square. Okay, hope you like today's lecture. Now from the previous from the subsequent lectures, we will continue to discuss these factors one by one. Thank you, students. See you in the next class.